Hi, everyone. Maybe a
Hello.
like a heads up if you can hear me.
We can hear you.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you everyone for joining me today. It's such a privilege to have you here. And thank you for taking the time to join us. Today I'm going to be talking about feeding kiddos from ages 5 to 10. And hopefully offering some tips and tricks on feeding your kids with confidence, either at home or throughout the school year, even when you're apart. So, with that said, I will go ahead and get started. All right. So, I'm Ashley. I am a registered dietitian here at the Tasty Balance, and I will be presenting today. Areas of emphasis for me are pediatric nutrition, so specifically toddlers through adolescence. I also help kids and adults who may have selective eating, which I'll explain that more in a minute. Also, people who may have ARFID, and I'm also neurodivergent affirming, meaning everybody has different learning styles and sensory needs when it comes to appointments and feeding. And so I always take those things into consideration. All right, just a few housekeeping things. So first off, please mute your microphones. It sounds like everybody has. If there are any questions, please feel free to ask them throughout the presentation, but do so in the chat box at the end or within the Google Meet. And I'll look at those at the end of the presentation. And if I have time, I can answer some common questions there. And also, kind of last thing is the presentation recording will be emailed to you. So you'll be able to listen even after the presentation is over today. There will be no handouts or slides, but the recording will be there with you. All right, so quick overview of today's takeaways. So first off, I will be explaining what is selective eating. This is a topic that a lot of parents struggle with. So I have both professional and personal experience with this. I'm raising two very active, hungry school-aged kids. And so I use a lot of these tips and tricks within my own family and helping other families. So we'll use some of that information to help navigate some food refusals. What do we do when the food that we offer is not received well? We will also be going into what do I feed my kid? What should I be looking at? What should I be thinking about as far as what that offering looks like? And then we'll also use that information to go into what are some school lunch ideas. School is coming up quickly, and probably a top question I get is what can I put in my kids' school lunch that they will actually eat? So we will go through that as well. All right. So let's start out with what is selective, or what we generally call it as, a society called picky eating. So we're trying to move away from the word picky because I feel like it identifies that there is something wrong with the child or makes them seem other when it comes to how they approach food. So using the term selective is a bit more neutral term. And so, to really identify this, selective eating is a general ongoing resistance to trying new foods. This isn't an outright refusal, but resistance, slow to warm up, curious, cautious, may not accept something right away. This can be a very common occurrence. It usually peaks between the ages of 2 and 6. For some kiddos, this might extend through adolescence or even into adulthood. Generally, these kiddos are reluctant, but they will try foods with low pressure exposures and offers. Meaning, if they are offered the food on a regular occasion in a low pressure way, they may feel like the water is warm enough for them to try it. Also, they usually have, they're eating at least across all food groups. So they have at least 30 or more foods that they will eat on a regular basis. And they can tolerate most textures, meaning if it's crunchy or mushy or gooey, they are still accepting of a wide variety of food textures. These kiddos usually return to a food that they've either refused before or that they've tried before. So even though they may try a food, not like it, eventually they may accept it and learn to like it. Generally, these kiddos, while it can be frustrating from a caregiver perspective, they're generally not at risk for nutrition or growth deficiencies because they're eating across most food groups. They are getting most of the nutrition that they need, even though they might be selective or very choosy within those food categories. Okay. What is a food jag? So this might be a new word for some people. So generally a food jag, if we think about hitting like a snag or like a bump in the road. So essentially this means a child wants to eat the same food prepared the same way every day, sometimes requesting it at every single meal. We as caregivers and parents in those feeding young kids, oftentimes this can feel confusing and frustrating. It's usually an intense temporary fixation. They find a food they love, they cling on to it, they want to eat it very, very often. This can usually last for a few days or even weeks. Then we find out that one day, for no reason, the child is no longer accepting that food. They're tired of that food. They don't want to eat it. And so they may have a period of time where they refuse that food because they're kind of burnt out on it. This can leave caregivers confused as thinking, okay, what next? You know, you've been requesting this food. I'm not really sure what to make you. So caregivers can offer support to help lessen this time period of a food jag, while also, respecting a child's wishes within reason. The concern here is maybe if we take away that food, their preferred food, without a replacement, this could impact their nutrition level. Or for instance, if they are still a selective eater and they don't have a really long list of preferred foods, we could have a concern for nutrition and development concerns if it's ongoing. But I think the good news here is this is it's child development related. Every kid or even adult goes through this. And honestly, it is something that we can work with kids to either expand their variety during this time or help like lessen the severity or intensity or length of how long this preferred food is clung on to. Okay, so we are now at a food jag. So how do we navigate that? The child is maybe asking or requesting the same food over and over. Maybe we're finding at this particular point in time that the child only wants a specific food for dinner. They're now requesting maybe that they have that food for dinner every single night. And then now we're requesting maybe they want the food for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So it can feel confusing. Sometimes as caregivers, we're like, okay, if this is the only thing you're going to eat, like at least I know you've eaten something. So while I know some parents may take that route and that's okay, there are other things that we can do to help support that child. So at this particular point, you can still continue to offer other foods with low pressure. So what this means is offering small portions of familiar foods that they've accepted in the past with their existing favorite food. So they still have options. They're still being offered a variety. They may still choose that preferred food, but as parents, at least we know that we have offered or tried other foods that they have been interested in the past. Over time, we can gradually offer small portions of new foods with the familiar foods. So this is not a great time to introduce a brand new food that they've never seen, never tried. They're probably not going to be receptive when they're in this food jag. So really, we're falling back on previously accepted foods and trying to rotate them and still expose them to foods that they've liked in the past. This prevents them getting burnt out on one particular food. Um, One great or several different ways is kind of preventing that burnout. So maybe we've noticed as a caregiver, a child is starting to request very frequently the same food or the same snack. That kind of just raises an awareness as a parent to say, okay, we're kind of getting stuck on this one food. It is okay to offer it, but how can we prevent them getting burnt out on their favorite food? That way we're not starting over. So here are a few ways that we can actually do that. So changing the shape or size. So for instance, if we're talking about maybe a pepper, we could cut it into chunks. We can cut it into strips. Same thing with carrots. We can do whole carrots. We can do shredded carrots. We can do carrot chips that come in a bag already prepackaged. So just changing the shape or the size can add a specific element of difference for the child. It helps them learn to still accept that food and know that it's still the same food, even though it's a different shape. Same thing for color. Maybe they're really into grapes. Maybe they're really into peppers. So we can still offer those foods, but maybe we just change the color of that. So maybe we're offering a red pepper versus a yellow pepper, or maybe we're offering a green grape versus a purple grape. So still the same food, a little slightly different taste, but again, helping the child recognize that, hey, this food actually comes in different colors. You could also try switching the brand, and I can kind of feel the size coming through. This can be difficult. Oftentimes kids are like very selective on brands and they like a very specific brand of something. What you can do initially is switching out different brands of the same item. So for instance, maybe this is yogurt, maybe it's mac and cheese, maybe it's chicken nuggets. So sometimes some of this can introduce a new taste profile without having to think of a brand new food. There may be resistance, but it is one of the tools that you can have in order to help them prevent getting stuck on that one specific brand. That can feel very hard if the brand changes, or for instance, maybe they discontinue the brand or your store stops selling it. Parents feel really stuck or feel like they need to really have a lot of that specific item in order to please their child, and that can feel really hard. We can also modify the texture. So if we're thinking about a French fry, French fries are great. What are some other forms or textures of that food that we can offer? So mashed potatoes versus baked potatoes versus baked potato wedges. So same food, but texture and taste is slightly different, and it exposes them to or tolerate different textures. We can also alter the temperature. So for instance, if you keep your fruit room temperature, like apples or cuties, kiwis, peaches, etc., try them chilled. They change the texture, they change the taste profile, but just sometimes by switching the temperature of something, it can change the way the child approaches it. So this could also mean frozen. So maybe they don't like regular grapes, but they'll eat frozen grapes. Maybe they don't like the texture of a specific vegetable or fruit, but they will eat it if it's cold or frozen. Some kids love cold peas, but will not eat them hot. So getting curious about maybe what temperature they would prefer and seeing if you can introduce that. A few other things are switching the cooking method. So switching the cooking method does change the temperature and the texture and the color. So this might be for kiddos who maybe are either older or are more open to foods. But for instance, if we're talking about a carrot or a pepper, so we know a carrot that is raw versus steamed versus roasted all taste very different. So introducing them to different cooking methods of the same food can also be beneficial. Always adding a sauce, changing up the sauce can be helpful. So do they like to dip things in ketchup, barbecue sauce, honey mustard, ranch, yogurt? Oftentimes these things really help excite a child and bring a little bit of a different element to their preferred food to help them branch out a little bit from keeping things very, very much the same. And then one other thing about their preferred food or maybe their favorite food during a food jag is try and keep it to at the most appropriate time of the day. So for instance, oatmeal, if they eat oatmeal for breakfast every single day and you know they're going to eat that for breakfast every single day, that's great. That's okay. We can make enough changes to that food to accommodate. We can add in chia seeds or flax seeds, peanut butter, jam. We can vary that specific food a little bit different in order to prevent them from getting burnt out. Sometimes there's cause for concern if they start saying like, okay, well now I want oatmeal for lunch. Okay, I want oatmeal for dinner. Occasionally that is fine, but that does kind of worsen that hyperfixation and limits the numbers of foods that they may accept on the road. Okay. So say we are working on trying these things. We're introducing new shapes and colors and textures, temperatures, and we're just really finding that our child is not receptive or we're having a really hard time dealing with refusals. I have two very honest kids, and oftentimes they will tell me exactly what they think about a food, and we take it personal. As caregivers, we think through the menu, we shop, we pick up the groceries, we put them away, we put a lot of time and effort and energy and finances into really finding foods that our kids like. And there's nothing more frustrating than going through that process as a caregiver only to find that the food that they said that they wanted, they don't want to eat it. So, what are some ways, like as a parent or caregiver, that we can support our kids while they're learning to find foods that they like? So, what we don't want to do is add shame or blame or anger if they are not receptive. That is going to probably cause a lot of stress between your relationship. And also, the child will probably be less likely to either expand the number of foods that they have or to try that food. So, we call this like low pressure offers, meaning it's very neutral. Hey, here's some peppers. Hey, here's some carrots. So how can we do that when we get like a really negative refusal? Ew, this is gross. Yuck, I don't want this. Maybe they're very upset. Maybe they're crying. And we're kind of feeling desperate. So here's some phrases that can help and hinder the process of a food jag, or maybe some selective eaters. So instead of coaxing kids, eat that for me. Can you eat that for me? This is teaching a child that, you know, they have to eat the food for love and approval. And, you know, that can kind of override the purpose of them trying new foods and building a relationship with food. Instead of eating that for me or bribing them, just eat one more bite, eat two more bites. We can use phrases that help them point out the familiarity of the food or the texture of the food or remind them, what is this food? So we can say something like, this is kiwi. It's sweet, like a strawberry. So if this is the first time they've seen it, they might be wondering, what the heck is this? Instead of comparing kids, oh, look at your sister. They're eating all of their bananas. Why can't you do the same? We can check in. Hey, you're not eating your bananas. Is your tummy full? This approaches the refusal from an element of curiosity. So, hey, what's going on here? Are you full? You just don't like it? What's going on? We're not adding blame or shame or responsibility for the child to eat the same exact way as their sibling or counterpart. So here's a few other phrases. If you want to scan the QR code, this is a really great, just simple scripts that you can have on hand in your back pocket to help use with kids. The last one is important. Stop crying and I'll give you a cookie. So sometimes using food as a bribe or a reward to get children to do certain things may be very effective, but in the long run, kids want love and affection, and feeling like they need to do something in order to earn food may distort their relationship with food. Okay. So you may be thinking, I've tried all of these things. I've been patient. I have tried to work through a lot of different things with my kiddo, but I'm just finding that something is off. There is a type of picky eating that kids do not outgrow. Most kids can be selective, maybe their whole life. But if they still have a robust amount of foods that they will eat, their health won't be as greatly affected. ARFID is called avoidant restrictive food intake disorder. With ARFID, this is the type of picky eating that kids don't or adults don't outgrow. So signs of this may include little interest in food or eating at all. You may find that your child is not requesting food or does not tell you that they're hungry or that they need to be reminded to eat. And maybe when they do eat, they're eating very, very little. They may refuse to eat foods with certain sensory qualities. This can happen with selective eaters. However, this may be more related to sensory processing disorder or neurodivergent kiddos. They might not accept a certain entire food group because of the color or the way that it smells or the way that it feels in their mouth or on their hands. Lastly, maybe a child has been sick after eating something, or they have a great fear that a certain food is going to make them sick. So this reduces their ability to want to try new foods or even accept past foods. So ARFID is more concerning if a child has, a very small list of foods that they will eat, and you're finding that introducing new foods is very stressful for them, or you're finding maybe they will only eat a specific food in a specific place that's a specific brand. Sometimes those are telltale signs that, hey, there might be something else going on. And there's a little screener on this slide that you can scan in order to see if your child does align with some of these. It's from Kids Eat in Color, and it's created by a dietitian who helps kids with ARFID and helps families through extreme picky eating. Okay, so good news is ARFID, food jags, selective eating. Usually the answer is exposure. So we have a kind of a common myth that maybe parents hold: if my child doesn't like something after I give it to them for the first time, they may not like it. In reality, study after study have shown that kids need frequent exposures to a new food before they even accept it. So kids are very curious. Sometimes they approach things in a very scientific way. Some kids are very adventurous eaters. They don't ask any questions, but I find that usually that adventurousness can fade again, maybe after the toddler stage, after age 3, we start getting into school age. Food list is getting smaller. Kids are getting pickier. And so really, how do we navigate this exposure? So down here, there's a picture, like what is the purpose of an exposure? So we expose the child to a food, it increases their familiarity with it. The hope is that it decreases the fear, and that it increases their acceptance and liking, and that it will be a food that they come back to again. So if you're asking yourself, what even is a food exposure? So an exposure is just literally the food being present sometimes. So all of these different things count as exposures. Exposure doesn't necessarily mean that the child is eating it, biting it, chewing it, swallowing it. It doesn't mean that they've accepted it. Basically, there are tons and tons of different steps that are listed here that count as an exposure. So if on the last slide, I think it was between 8 and 15 different exposures. That doesn't mean you're technically offering that food 8 to 15 times, but there are different ways we can expose the child to that specific food. As you can see, the very last step on this list is to bite, chew, and swallow. Food is a very sensorial process, meaning it uses all of our senses. So if we can expose a food to a child in different ways that their senses can tolerate, then we are able to increase the likelihood that they'll feel safe around the food and want to eat it. So this could be tolerating it on a plate, such as, hey, here's some peas on your plate today. If they're able to look at it, be around it, be okay with it on their plate, that means they're able to tolerate it. Maybe it's the smell. Maybe the smell of something can be very off-putting the first time you smell something, but after a while, maybe the smell is not as repulsive. Touching with an object or another preferred food. So this would be like poking it with a fork. Another step would be like squishing it between their fingers or picking it up. Maybe they're interested in the texture, but they're not ready to put it up to their mouth yet. This could be they want to feel it on the back of their hand. So as you can see, as you go on, the very last step is bite, chew, and swallow. So this is a bit more of a nuanced way to expose kids who maybe have ARFID, but this just raises awareness that simply chewing and swallowing the food is not necessarily an exposure. It could simply being in the food environment. There are lots of ways to present food as an exposure that are low pressure or no pressure. So these ideas are really just to help build connection with food, regulate the nervous system, help them feel comfortable and tolerate being in the same room with the food for some kids, or being okay or tolerating the smell. So the more often we expose kids to a variety of foods, normalize it, the less likely they are to refuse it or be picky. So here are some ways that you can expose kids to foods without any specific outcome as far as eating it. In one of the trainings I did, probably in school, that I think was like the best advice. I wish I could remember the resource, but if the first time the child is seeing the food is on the plate, the likelihood of them actually eating it is very low. So how can we introduce that food to them and normalize it before it even gets to their plate? So this is no stress as far as the pressure to eat. So putting away groceries together. Younger kids like to help, and putting away strawberries, blueberries, oranges, bananas. They're holding some autonomy there, but they're also getting to see what's coming in the house. Also, you can invite them to help with meals. So this doesn't necessarily mean, they have a big responsibility, but it could be that they are cutting up a cucumber. They are setting the table. They are putting cups on the table. They're putting ice in the glasses. So involving kids in the meal prep process increases the likelihood that they will be, that they'll eat the food if they know how it's prepared, what it looks like. Oftentimes too, kids will kind of chop things up and maybe sneak some things in their mouth accidentally. But the idea is like, oh, that's an exposure. And they're kind of testing the waters without feeling the pressure of either eating it to appease or being afraid of hurting your feelings or feeling like if they don't eat it, they're going to get in trouble, etc. Reading books about food is also a really, really great way. From a young age, this can be fun depending on the age level. But reading books about food, going to the library, reading stories about families from different cultures eating food together and what that looks like. It could even be stories about how food is grown. Those are always really fun stories. So connecting kids with food outside of the table can be a great way to share exposures, but also build connection with you. Here in St. Louis, there's tons of farmers markets. So going to a farmers market is always really fun, getting to see where food comes from, looking at all the vibrant colors, the atmosphere. It's usually very happy, pleasant, etc. So it can be kind of a fun thing. Some people like to take their kids to the store, some don't. It just depends. But farmers market can kind of be one of those activities that is still fun, but like low pressure to eat. And they can even pick out some foods. Sharing your own curiosity about food. Sometimes if you're cutting something up in the kitchen, maybe it's a watermelon, maybe it's a cantaloupe. It's like, oh, wow, I didn't know a cantaloupe smelled like this. More oftentimes than not, a kid will want to come in, what do you mean? What does it smell like? And so at that point, you're not teaching them anything. specific, but hey, like, I didn't know it smelled this sweet. Like, oh, what does it feel like on the outside? Is it bumpy? Ew, did you feel the seeds in here? This is really squishy. So it's really just a way for you to spark some curiosity and connection and allow them to kind of feel the food out before there's even any type of pressure for them to eat it. Last but not least, growing something together. So this can just be a very small herb garden in your kitchen. Some families like to grow gardens. It could even just be a flower. It doesn't really have to be anything all that expensive or intensive, but sometimes growing things together can connect you, but also help kids become more comfortable with different textures like the dirt, the water, the smell. So all of those things help their nervous system tolerate those different textures, so that maybe they can be less likely to be picky in other areas. Okay, another great way to reduce pickiness and increase exposure is eating together. Modeling the foods that you want your kids to eat. Whenever a child sees a trusted person eating a new food, it subconsciously cues their nervous system to feel safe. This is their nervous system is not registering this as gross or icky or scary, but simply seeing a family member enjoying a new food can be considered an exposure. And whenever adults or caregivers in the household or in the environment are eating a variety of foods like fruits and vegetables and things like that, our kids are a lot more likely to eat them as well. Okay. A few other like guidance on picky eating or selective eating or excuse me, other ways to just approach selective eating or modeling a healthy relationship with food. This information is called division of responsibility, and it's really helpful for kids, toddlers through adolescence. So it basically just identifies, hey, there are two different responsibilities that each person in the feeding relationship carries. So parents are responsible for what is offered, when it's offered, and where it's offered. So the what might be oatmeal, when, breakfast, where, the table. At that point in time, the child is responsible. Am I going to eat how much of the oatmeal am I going to eat it? And am I going to eat it at all? So we cannot force kids to eat. We should not coerce them. We should not blame them or shame them. Essentially, they are responsible. This is really helpful for neurotypical children. For other children who maybe have sensory processing or more have concerns with ARFID, they may not be able to regulate their appetite or know when they're hungry or full. So they might need more guidance or direction. So I would just share that this is more for neurotypical development. Okay, if you're saying, all right, well, what the heck do I even feed my kid at this point? Here is kind of a basic, and if you've ever worked with me, you've probably seen this exact slide. It is so common because it is such a very kind of watered down explanation of what we need to eat. It's called the balanced plate, and the idea is that our plate has 4 sections. If you take a circle plate and you draw a line from the top to the bottom, left to right, you have about 4 different sections. And in each of those sections, we have different food groups, all of the different 5 food groups. And so the goal is not necessarily to worry about what is a serving size or how many servings per day, or the idea is that you're offering variety throughout the day in hopes that they're being exposed to the food and they're accepting of it, and they're also meeting their nutritional needs. So the goal is half plate is veggies, 1/4 of the plate is a protein, and the other quarter would be fiber foods, also known as carbohydrates. So those are grains, fruit, and other, excuse me, carbohydrate related foods. So the overall goal, if you're like, this is still really confusing, is pair a fiber food for fullness and a protein food for staying power. Those two things together do help a parent feel confident that their child is getting what they need and not feeling so restrictive about, are they eating too much? Are they eating too little? Also know that beverages fall in this line too. So, okay, what should my kid be drinking? Water. So this shouldn't be limited. They can have a water bottle. They can drink this at meal times or in between. For milk, um, or a milk alternative, first off, for selective eaters or slow to try eaters, I would definitely recommend doing a lower fat percentage and sticking with about 4 ounces with meals and snacks at the table. So we're not drinking milk away from the table or in the car. Essentially, this serves as an add-on or part of the meal rather than it being like a snack in between. Often kids, that a lot of times is a big culprit to picky or selective eating is if they're drinking milk in between meal and snack times, or they can have it on a pretty regular basis outside of the table. Oftentimes they're just not hungry when it's snack or dinner time. So sticking with a smaller amount, smaller fat percentage, and then also having it with meals and snacks. Same thing with fruit juice, 100% fruit juice with meals and snacks at the table. This is just a note on added sugar. I won't go into a lot of detail, but essentially with beverages and with snacks and things, I know parents are often concerned about sugar and the amount of added sugar. Just as a baseline, 25 grams per day is what the American Academy of, anyway, the AAP for kids aged 2 to 18 is 25 grams a day. So the goal here is to not necessarily label sugar as bad. It's basically just used as a data point to compare products. So we know that added sugars is included on nutrition labels now. At the top, there's a picture here, and we can see in this food item that there's 12 grams of sugar. That means right below that, it says there's 10 grams of added sugar. So meaning that the 10 of the 12 grams of sugar total is added in, meaning it's not currently existing, for instance, like in milk or fruit. So this just means it's been added for taste. There's not necessarily any additional nutritional value there. All right, we've got a few minutes left, so I might kind of go through these a little bit quicker, but when do we offer? So going back to division of responsibility, the what and the when, offering 3 meals, 2 to 3 snacks, about 3 to 4 hours apart. So the goal here is to encourage body autonomy. We're not teaching them to override their hunger cues, but at this time, the child still gets to decide of what's offered, what are they going to eat, and how much. So snack examples, going back to the plate that we talked about a few slides ago, how can we add in a fiber food and a protein food? Fat is also important and is usually included in a protein food, but here are some small examples. So we have crackers and cheese, apples and peanut butter, yogurt with granola, hummus, carrots, and crackers. Okay. The last point that I wanted to talk about is how to create a lunchbox for kids. I love this resource by Caroline Chambers and Molly from What to Cook. Basically, there is a QR code here, and you can scan this. You can download it, you can print it out, you can put it on your refrigerator. But it is such a stress-less-ish way to prepare lunchbox meals. I know with my kiddos, sometimes I just get like, what am I going to feed you? What do you want? I don't want you eating the same thing every single day. How can I make it exciting without stressing myself out? So here is a way to approach that without having to feel like at a loss of like, what should I be doing? So their suggestions are very much in alignment with the balanced plate method. We're wanting to make sure that they have a protein, a fiber food, some fruits, some vegetables, but also I love the idea that she's also adding in a snacky thing and something sweet. Some examples here are a sun butter and banana sandwich with some pea crisps, some blueberries, bell peppers, and then some low sugar gummies. For some kids, they may love this. For some kids, they might be hesitant. One thing to consider is that putting a dessert or a gummy or something sweet or crunchy or novelty in a lunchbox it basically presents the message that all of these foods are neutral and you get to decide and choose of what is offered, what are you going to eat? And I know that some parents would say, well, my kid's only going to eat the gummies and my kid might only eat the chips. That might be the case. We'll talk a bit about tips on how to like talk through that if there's more food that's coming back. For other parents, they may not feel super comfortable with sending like a candy or a snacky food at lunchtime because they know that they're probably getting those maybe at school or after school. So definitely reverting back to that division of responsibility, you still get to decide the what. So if something like this stands out to you that's like, oh no, I don't feel great about that, you can still introduce the protein, the fat, the fruit, the grain. Here's another example. So we have some salami with mozzarella, crackers, carrot sticks, ranch, dried fruit with chocolate chips. So something like this, there's so much variety here that I could touch on as far as what you can change out. You can change again the carrots. You could do the shredded carrots or the carrot chips. You could change up the dressing. It could be honey mustard. You could change up the crackers. They could be cheddar crackers or they could be whole grain crackers. You can switch up the cheese. It could be cheddar cheese. It could be mozzarella cheese. It can be a cheese stick. It can be a cheese cube. Same thing for the meat. It could be pepperoni. It could be turkey. It could be chicken. If kiddos aren't big meat eaters, it could be something different. That's perfectly fine. Kind of last bit on lunch packing tips. So utilize leftovers where you can. For instance, if you are having fresh fruit or vegetables for dinner that night, you could very well carry that over into lunch the next day. Pack it at night if possible. If there are items that you already know are going to be refrigerated, go ahead and, put it in the lunchbox and put it in the refrigerator to make it less stressful for morning routine, which can be very crazy. Keep it simple. So I know my kids will come home complaining about little Johnny has steak and salmon in his lunchbox. Why don't I have that? For some parents, that might be realistic, but full disclosure for me, it is not. So a lot of times there's some comparison traps for parents of how can I make this exciting and enticing? We're just doing the best we can at this point in time. We can't control the environment that they're going to be eating that lunch in, but we can control what they have and maybe what it looks like when we put it in there. Don't feel like you need to stress yourself out. And probably last thing I'll say is keep your cool if their lunch comes home. There's a lot of reasons why kids kids might not eat their lunch. They might not have enough time. Whatever was packed might be squished and look kind of icky. The temperature might have changed. So it might have been cold when it left the house, but it's kind of lukewarm when they get there. That's just a great way to offer like curiosity when they get home. Hey, I noticed you wanted, chicken wings for lunch, but you didn't eat them. What's up? Oh, I realized like they did not taste good. So all that to say, we can do our best. There is some food that's going to come back home, but the reality is this is just one meal of the day. If we go back to that division of responsibility, we know that kids are going to be offered additional food and they can make up that nutrition either at dinner or maybe even the next day with breakfast. Okay. So if you guys have any questions, you can drop them in the chat. Since we are at time, I might not have time to answer them right here and there, but you can always email me. I'm Ashley at thetastybalance.com. I also wanted to say that most people don't know that the Tasty Balance does take insurance and that oftentimes people are paying nothing or for nutrition visits. In the St. Louis office, I do in-person and virtual visits. We also have other dietitians in Kansas City and in the St. Louis office that do see adults. So if you have some questions like, hey, I'm resonating with some of this, but I'm not a kid, come and see us. There's a scheduling QR code there. You can also go to our website at the bottom there. And here's a list of resources. All right. Thank you guys for coming. I'm going to see if I can look at the chat real quick if anybody wants to hang on. If not, that's okay too. Okay. Okay, on the balanced plate, if we know our kid won't eat half a plate of vegetables, do we still present that? Yes. So oftentimes we'll offer a food that we know straight out my kid is not going to eat this. However, we consider that an exposure. A few things that you can do is offer autonomy. So maybe they get to choose the side. Hey, tonight we're having peas or carrots. Which one do you want? Sometimes with that choice, that will give them enough autonomy to want to try it because they feel like they have a say so in it. For some kids, they may say peas, I want peas. And then you put the peas on their plate and they don't eat it. That's very common. Some kids change their mind very quickly. However, that food being on the plate essentially is an exposure and it still gives them a chance to eat it. They don't have a chance to eat it or accept it or try it if it's not on their plate. Another way is to serve it family style. So maybe we have a bowl of peas or the vegetables and they can serve it themselves. Sometimes that excitement will kind of trigger some autonomy there. You never know when a kid is going to sneak a pea or smash it or pinch it or put it on their face. All of those things are considered exposures, which increase the likelihood that they'll try the food at a later time. Is it okay to put a whole bite on there instead of fill the whole plate? I have one that I think would get overwhelmed with a large portion. Yeah, I think that's a great idea. So, starting out small. If you know a child is hesitant to warm up to a new food, we really don't want to offer a huge portion size because that feels really overwhelming and like, oh my gosh. Putting a very small amount on there is perfectly fine. That might make them feel a bit more confident in trying it. And then at the same time, I know food waste is another thing. So a lot of this is coming from food privilege. We have food, we know kids are going to eat at the next meal, etc. So food waste is a big conversation when it comes to picky eaters. I spend a lot of money on food, or I can't buy all these special foods for my kids that they want. So that can be really difficult. So food waste is a really like hot topic with selective eaters. So small portions can help avoid that. Okay. All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining. If there are any other questions, feel free to email me, schedule an appointment if you need to, or listen to the recap that'll be emailed out. Thank you.